Well, welcome back, everybody, for another We Talk Photo episode of We Talk Photo with my good friend Sean Pedersen. And we have a really great repeat special guest, Andy Mumford from, I believe, Lisbon, Portugal, where he
Okay, yep,
currently
that's where I live.
resides. Believe it or not, we call him home. He travels, he's going to tell us, but he's a real traveler, and we're lucky we got him in one spot for a change. But welcome, Andy. Thank you for taking some time to be here
It's
with
really
Sean and I.
nice to be back and talking to you guys again, seeing you both.
Yeah.
Andy's one of my, he's going to blush, but he's one of the people, even before we got to know Andy, that I picked up on his work because it's really, really unique. We're going to put a link to Andy's website for everybody to to check out if you don't already know it. Andy's a really amazing photographer. And Andy, why don't you just for the people who don't know and for the people who are here that haven't heard you last time, maybe John, we could put a link to the first podcast we did with Andy
Okay,
too. So,
sure.
but tell everybody a little bit about your world.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm a landscape photographer. I've probably been doing this for about 20 years, which makes me realize how old I'm getting. And I think people come into photography usually from, in my experience with landscape photography, people come in either from the photography side in that they love photography and they've been around the photography world and they eventually come in, realize that nature photography is what they want to do, or they come in the way that I do, which was I wasn't really interested in photography. I was interested in nature and hiking and being outside and being in these places. And then photography came as an addition to that. And that has always kind of fed into my photography. It's being in these places, being inspired by just how incredible the planet is, the landscape is, this sense of wonder that you can feel. And trying to communicate that. It's not really communicating the place so much as communicating the way that the place makes you feel. And I've been, fortunate enough in the time that I've been doing this to get to visit some beautiful parts of the world. And I think that's where it always comes back to is being in these places and being, that sensory overload of being surrounded by this just incredible scene and wanting to find a way to capture that in a small two-dimensional rectangle.
Yeah. That was, Andy, that was one of the things that always attracted me to your work was you could sense that connection that you have with the landscape and the appreciation for what you're seeing and the thoughtfulness that goes into creating a photograph that sort of represents your experience there. And that instead of just being a documentary photograph, it I could always sense this connectivity with your work. And that's inspiring and attractive and it really makes me love your work.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
one of the things too that, and I know we're giving you all these kudos here, but
Gonna get
they're
his head
well
all big.
deserved. Well,
I
no,
am
the thing is that
susceptible to compliments.
I happen to have a really good friend, John. You as well,
Yeah.
who's done workshops with us and with Andy, and just really speaks extremely high of the experience. And the thing that is different what Andy does than what we do. Andy circles the world. Andy, give everybody an idea where you've been in the last year. What do you hear this?
Um, so okay, wow, where would I start? So the last trip, let's go backwards. Namibia for desert elephants and landscapes. Before that was Botswana. There's been Japan. There's been the wonderful, incredible landscapes of Utah, which has just blown my mind late last year in November. Madeira and Azores Islands, Galapagos and Ecuador, the Amazon last year, Patagonia, Iceland. That's probably the last, yeah, 18 months.
That's
So
enough.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
enough.
incredibly, I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do this, and and it's because we're lucky to have really wonderful clients like the person that you mentioned
Yeah,
who want to travel with us because it's a blessing to be able to go to these places and you you do workshops because it's not just about the photography, it's the experience that you have of traveling to these
exactly.
with
Yes.
like-minded people. I think a lot of people when you're doing photography, if you're traveling with your spouse or with your family, you always feel a little bit guilty because you're trying to find a
Yeah,
way to fit photography into the travel. But when you're doing workshops, everyone wants the same thing. You've got a group of people who are all happy to get up at stupid times in the morning and I find that shared experience is another element of the photography of being in these places and sharing that, seeing people go, wow, is just another level to the being in the place.
Yes, 100%. And to me, that's kind of another reason why to go on a workshop versus kind of self-guided because of that shared experience. I
Yeah.
think it enriches the whole thing to be with a group of like-minded people. Yeah, but
yeah.
we're blessed to be able to surround ourselves with people like that have the same passion that we do for getting up at stupid times of the morning.
And I
One,
think you see people inspiring each other as well, because one of the things
Yeah,
people will look at the back of someone's camera and go, "Oh, I didn't see it like that. That's an interesting way of framing it." So beyond just the input that you get from the instructor, you see people because there's always people on workshops who see things that I've not seen, or they'll see things in a completely different way. And I'm always kind of like, wow, I would never have seen that. I would never have thought of composing in that way. And then that kind of bounces around the group. I just think, people learn so much from each other and they take this kind of inspiration and you kind of form when you're traveling together, this kind of bond or esprit de corps or whatever, where there's usually a point in the workshop like about 3 or 4 days in when you're driving back from a location and you can feel the buzz in the vehicles behind you or around the dinner table, and you just know everyone is just feeling this kind of pleasure and this inspiration and being in these places, and it's brilliant. It's such a pleasure to be able to be part of facilitating that, I think, as an instructor.
you know, eh, with one of the challenges that we see here, John and I have talked about this ad nauseum, is the YouTube university factor and some of the other things that are available now through the internet and um, social media, putting GPS coordinates down and everything that, some people are feeling they don't need to do these on one-to-one or group workshops, and they will totally miss what you just talked about. You
Yeah.
can't get that. And I think people need to see the value in being with someone like you or John and I, and being in a group environment. You don't get that on YouTube. You just don't get it.
No, and I mean, I use YouTube I think it's a wonderful teaching resource, and I
I
think
agree.
social media has really democratized um, a lot of the arts, from music through photography and all different things. But there is no, and this is why I think if you want to expand the conversation out to things like AI or whatever, there is no substitute for being in a place, just feeling what you feel and sharing that. I think with like-minded people is just another level, and having there's also everyone is very different. I used to find photography quite stressful. Some aspects of like going to a new location because I would be worried that I would go there and I would mess it up. That I'd hike out to this location, the light would be good and that I'd mess it up. And I think being around people and knowing that you've got, the support there, that your instructor knows the location, that he's going to be able to just and everyone, people want different levels of support. Some people are really, really happy working things out for themselves, and some people really, want to lean on you for, from everything from composition to camera settings. and and all the different element parts of the scale between those two. And I think it's just it's like a safety net of knowing I know that we will go to a place where it's really good. I'm not going to waste my time. I know that these people will be able to help me get the best out of it. And I think that's something that you get from photo tours, is that you've got this combined shared knowledge of location, of light, of camera settings, of how to get the best out of it. Because when I started a long time ago, I would always come back and think, I'd look at the images and think, oh, I probably should have done this, or I forgot to do that, or I didn't look over here, or maybe if I'd switched and done a telephoto shot, and I think there's always a little bit of kind of some possible FOMO or regret, if that makes sense, that I'm maybe missed something. So I think it's nice to have people who you can lean on.
Yeah.
100%.
So, Andy, we're not a gear centric podcast, but you are a Fujifilm camera and lens owner. Anything new that you've acquired recently? Probably not.
Not supposed to say. No, I mean, I'm currently I'm a Fuji user, and I do love their gear, but I'm kind of I use both the medium format, the GFX system, and also the smaller XT series, and I love them both equally. I've talked both about the differences. I think
Right.
they both bring different things. They both have their own drawbacks, and they both have their own advantages, and I tend to use them 50-50. But currently, I am without an the smaller series. I'm without them because I managed to break mine. And that's not to say that they're not tough cameras. They are very tough. But if you drop them in the ocean, that tends
We've all done that. I drowned that XT4 at a 100 to 400 up at Olympic National Park one time in the ocean. It happens. If you don't do that, you're not working hard enough, frankly.
Mine went off a cliff one year, so yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to weather sealing and build strength.
Yeah.
in every bit of
Are you
it.
still, Andy, are you still shooting? You had an XE5 for a while, a little compact one. You still shooting that?
That's the one that drowned. I love the XT5. It's a brilliant camera. But yeah, I got hit by 3 massive Atlantic waves. Like the first one, then the second, and the third one, like knocked me off my feet, and it just totally
Yeah.
killed the camera. And there are rumors that there will be a new Fuji camera releasing in the not too distant future. So I decided to wait for that.
Yeah. Well, they're only rumors,
Only rumors.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyhow, so one of the reasons we wanted to get Andy here is because Andy's going to do a book. So without big introduction, want to tell everybody about it. I can't wait to see Andy's. I mean, there's something about looking at images, John, on paper. Would you agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not that we're 100 years old. I am. John's a little younger, but I still hold books in my hand, and I love looking at images.
The experience is very different with reflected light versus backlight off a screen, and just the tactile sensation of having a physical media in your hands is incredible.
Yes, I can't wait. Andy, let's tell everybody.
I think the thing that you guys have just said is absolutely on the nose. And so, I think the backstory has to be that when I came into photography, I started being obsessed with photography books, and I would buy, everything that I could find by Galen Rowell and Art Wolfe and Joe Cornish, a lot of the classic English.
Imagine that, John.
And that was where my inspiration came from. So, before, because this was pre-Instagram, pre-social media, so my inspiration came from books, and I've always loved books. And I think everything that you say is completely true. There's something about the tactile nature of a product, but I think that there's something more than that that I think is interesting, is that the way that we consume not just photography but media now is in a very distracted way. If you're looking at images on your computer or on the phone, first of all, you're seeing them smaller and they're backlit. You're not seeing them as big as you should be, but you're seeing them in an environment where you're a notification in the corner of your screen away from being a message or an email coming through. A book it's a deliberate action. You get out of your chair, you walk over to your bookshelf and you choose a book and you sit down with that book. And it's a deliberate action. I am going to look at this book. You're not on a device that's got a million other distractions. You're giving your time and your attention to the work in that book. And this is one of the things that I was thinking, what is it about books that makes them so special? And I think it's the same, I think, with music. I'm passionate about music, and from what you were saying earlier, so are you. And I think that there's a difference between scrolling through Spotify, iTunes, and listening to everlasting playlists, or going to your shelf and pulling out a record and the act of cleaning the record and putting it on, and then you sit with that. And it's just a different way of, I don't even like to use the word consume but it's just a different way of interacting, of connecting. That's the word, of connecting.
Experience.
Of experiencing the art, whether it be the music or whether it be the photography, because you're fully engaged with it. And I don't think we do that very much nowadays with a lot of with music or photography or even literature. So many things where there's so many things competing for our attention. So I think, the act of sitting down with a photography book, giving some time to it, even if it's just 5 minutes, you flick through the pages, and for that time, you're engaging with it in a very different way that you do to when it's on your laptop or whether it's on a phone. So that I wanted to do a book, because I wanted to, from selfish reason, I wanted to almost engage in my own work in that way, because I rarely get to see my prints. I live in quite a small apartment and we don't have that many walls. And most of the prints that I sell, they're kind of handled by a print shop and then drop shipped out. So I don't get to see a lot of my own work in print. So there were kind of sort of selfish reasons that I wanted to have a book, where I've been doing this for 20 years, and I thought, I've never really sat down and put a collection of my work together. There's my webpage, but that's digital. I want a tactile, physical collection, printed collection of what I've been doing with my life for the last 20 years. So that's really, how it came about, was that desire just to make something tactile and that I engage with in a different way, and that I look at it and go, this is what I've done. I'm really proud of this, and anyone who's done books knows that there's not really much financial motivation for doing a book, because the profit that you make from them is minuscule. So you're doing them really because you want to make something that you're proud of. There's almost an element of ego driving it. So yeah, I just wanted to after having done this for this long and being this deep into my career, thinking this will probably be the only book that I ever do. Because it's such a huge job to sit down, go through all of the work that I've done, to try to find a way of making those images work together, and then of revisiting the editing, of cleaning, making sure everything's clean, and images that were taken 15 years ago with much older technology still stand side by side with much more recent cameras, and so that the quality is good, and then finding a way for them to flow. So that was just a huge amount of work, but it's also a pleasure, I think, because I hadn't done that. One of the things you were talking about me traveling a lot earlier is that it's very easy to always be looking forward to the next trip, and that you get back from a trip and you edit the images and you put them on your website, and then there's always the next thing, and that is a blessing. It's always nice to be looking forward to things, but in that, I think you lose some of the appreciation, and it's been really nice for me to sit back and look at images that I took in, I don't know, 2009, 2010, and go, I haven't looked at these for 10 years, and reevaluate them and sit and try to see the kind of through line to what I'm doing now and find a way of connecting them together. And that was a pleasure to kind of sit and reevaluate my own work. So yeah, that's how the book came about. And it's being published. It's a coffee table book, 144 pages, have just over 100 images in it. To raise money for it because I wanted it to be the absolute best quality that it can be.
Yeah, if
I'm
you're gonna
doing,
do it.
yeah, I didn't want to be looking at a book and it being, looking at the paper quality and thinking,
Yeah.
it's really thick paper, 150 GSM paper, so it's like print quality paper. And I just wanted it to be the best that it could because it may well be the only one that I ever do. So yeah, there'll be just 500 copies printed. Of those 50 are limited editions in like nice presentation boxes and stuff. And there'll be a Kickstarter going out probably in August. So it'll be on my website. I'll announce it on the YouTube channel and on all the social media
Yeah,
and on.
we'll also pick it up in further episodes here, John.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
We'll,
So,
we'll
so folks,
get
just a
up.
quick call out. If you don't follow Andy on social media, please go do it so you can get announcements when that Kickstarter gets released.
yeah, and I really hope that it that I can make it work. But yeah, I think we it is very easy to forget the pleasure of a printed image.
Oh yeah.
And it's like I was saying with music, you can be overwhelmed by quality. We have so much incredible work around us from TV shows to musicians to photography that it can be overwhelming and it's all there. It's a click away. So I think that there is some really something to be said for the art of slowing down with a book, with a record, with something, making a cup of coffee or a drink, sitting there and going, I'm going to give 10 minutes of my day to appreciating this thing.
You know what struck me, Andy, when you were talking about that and describing about that deliberate act of grabbing a book or putting on a
Mhm.
record, and what popped into my head was the mental health benefits of just putting aside all distractions and just being
Mm,
present with this media,
absolutely.
whatever it is, and how wonderful that is for us.
Because I'm guilty of that. I think we
Oh,
all are.
yeah,
It's if you're doing anything, I mean, literally, if you're doing anything, if you're working, it is your life is going to have a significant element of being online. And that automatically connects you to so much stuff. And I think that there are so many great things about that. I've been able to create my career through my photography being known online. But there's also a loss, and I think that it's not healthy to be permanently switched on, permanently connected, permanently scrolling, not just scrolling through, horrible news or whatever, just through content because it's
yeah.
overwhelming and we lose that capacity to focus and be exactly as you say, to be in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I'm
Well,
excited for this.
I go a little further than that, Andy. I own, I bet I have maybe 2,500 records and probably about 2,500 CDs.
Hmm.
And every night when I'm here, I listen to something. And I don't take my phone, I don't take my iPad.
Hmm.
It stays in the kitchen. When I go listen to music, I totally like to disconnect from all of that temptation. So,
And then that becomes almost like a treat that you give yourself. You know,
absolutely.
that, that,
I
that
look
time,
forward to it every day.
it's a
It's
special.
al it's almost a form of meditation in a way, just to
Mhm.
remove distractions and focus on one thing. To me, it's very meditative. So,
It is so. What? Tell just. You've got the book laid out. Is it ready to go? Is it?
Yeah, so it's practically there's still a few kind of changes going into to the page order, but it's pretty much done. It's pretty much done. So the challenge is when you've with anything is a book is it can't just be a random collection of photos. And how do you make it work? What's the flow going to be? How do you make it engaging? So I bounced around different themes, and in the end, I didn't want to focus on one particular location or one particular thing. So I wanted it to be representative of everything that I've done. So that was quite challenging of trying to find ways of tying the work together. Because usually if you look on my website, it's, there's an Iceland gallery and there's a, Utah gallery and there's a Pacific Northwest gallery and an Italy gallery. And it didn't really work that way. I didn't want to do it like that. So what I decided to do was split it down into two almost landscape elements. So there are mountains, there's a chapter on mountains, one on deserts, one on water, where water is the strongest element, one on trees, and then one on the human landscape, where the human landscape is images where there's a strong something that's man-made in there. So if you've seen like the huts in Lofoten or the desert, the collapsed deserted buildings that have been reclaimed by the desert in Kolmanskop in Namibia, or the huts, the farmhouses in Tuscany, those kind of images would go into the human landscape. And I thought that was interesting because then you look at deserts and you've got the deserts of the Southwest, which are just one thing. Then there's the deserts of Namibia, which are completely different.
Yep.
And then you've got the deserts of central Iceland, the Iceland Highlands. It's a black volcanic desert. So I liked that way that you could mix very different things together, but within that same theme. And then just looking at trying to find ways of getting things to flow from page to page, which I think is often a challenge in a book. You've got two images facing each other, so you want them to be some kind of connection. So you're looking at maybe complementary colors across pages, or just maybe echoing compositional elements in terms of like the structure of the image. They might be very different colors and maybe very different locations, but there's a fundamental similarity in the way that the images are constructed. So it was just pairing them together, and I worked a lot with the publisher and the book designer to do that, because that was another thing, is that I working with a publishing house, and they had a designer. I thought about sending them like a PDF going, I want it like this. But I thought it would be interesting just to send them the images. So, these are the mountain images, these are the desert images, and seeing what they came back with, because they would be far more objective than I am, because it is very hard to be objective about your work. This is what I found when I was choosing work. There's all kinds of things. You have like a recency bias. I think, images that you've taken more recently, you're like, oh, I'm super, that's really fresh in my head, whereas something from 14 years ago, there's that, and then there's the bias that we have that goes around the creation of the image, because it was a particularly wonderful night, or the effort that we put in to get that image, which the people who are observing it, they're not aware of that. They're just seeing the image. So I just basically handed them all off to see what she came back with. And it was really interesting, there was some that I really was quite keen on that she hadn't included in the book. And it's like,
Oh,
I really liked that image. So then there was a back and forth. It's like, look, this image is really important to me. So then you tell the story of the image and explain why. So then we found a way of incorporating that. And then that kind of leaned into the captions, because I originally wasn't really sure about putting captions in the image. But then you realize that actually sometimes those stories behind the image, they really do support.
yeah.
Right.
I'm a big believer that images should stand on their own. I think art should stand on its own without being explained. You shouldn't have to have any knowledge or care about photography to be able to enjoy the photograph, and you shouldn't need to know it. If something is a good piece of art, then it should stand on its own as a good piece of art. And so I was kind of reluctant to use captions, but then, in these kind of backwards and forwards that I had with the designer, she was like, no, but it is an interesting story. And then I see the image differently. So you should do that. So then, I sit down and write captions for all of the images. And sometimes, there's not a story. Sometimes it's just, it's a tree in really nice light. But some of the images, there's a particular explaining what it is and why it caught my eye, and or what it is about that that is particularly special. So that was a really nice collaborative process, working with the designer and going backwards and forwards and seeing how she viewed my work. Um, and for the most part, I was like really happy with what she did, and it was much better than if I'd have done it, because I think my own prejudices would have got in the way. And I'm a photographer, but I'm not a book designer. So she was looking at it from how people's eyes work when they move across a page and things like that. And then, we kind of worked out a way of making sure that the images that were particularly important to me found their way into the book.
Good for you. Well, that's why they do what they do, and that's why
Yeah.
you do what you do. You know, I'm a.
Uh,
It's going to be great. I wish it was ready to go.
I know.
You know, Andy's done some. And we're going to bang this up here in a minute, but on Andy's website, and I think everybody ought to check it out. He's done some really great work. He does have a YouTube channel as well, which has really, especially if you're a Fujifilm uh, uh, user, he's got some great reviews on some lenses and offers some great insight that is really really helpful. Andy, where are you going next? You're home for a while, right?
Yeah, and next I'm going to back to Namibia, which is it's always special. It's just incredible landscapes. I like not all my images are definitely not all minimalists, but I'm really attracted to. I was trying to think about this in the book. I think there are places where the landscape overwhelms you. I think anyone who's been doing photography long enough, there'll be places that you see that you never go to photograph, and they can be disappointing. And what you realize is that the photos of the places are actually, I don't know how to say this. They may be, you'll be standing in a place and you can make a great photograph, but there's a road right behind you,
Right.
Right.
and you don't see that in the photos. And then there are places that you go to where you're just overwhelmed, by the scale of a place, and it just hits you. Um, and Namibia is like that. It's just this landscape of just these incredible abstract line and shape and color.
Oh,
Um, and I think the last time I spoke to you, it was before I'd been to the US. I think
Yeah.
I maybe even
yeah.
spoke about how much I wanted to see the US. Well, good God, you people, you don't know how lucky you are. Because I'd wanted to go to the US for a long time. I've been inspired by so many American photographers. And then you sit down and you go, as a European or as a non-American, going, okay, where do I want to go in America? And then you think, Christ, there's so much of it. I don't really know where to start, because
Right.
you've got like the Pacific Northwest, and then you've got the Rockies, and you've got the waterfalls in Oregon, and you've got the mountains in Washington State, and then there's so much, and then you've got the Southwest, and you think, okay, well, Southwest looks cool, and like just the Southwest alone, you could
Make a whole
Lifetime,
career.
and
lifetime.
then I realized why people like, your friend Guy Tal, why
Yeah.
he never leaves Utah. You can spend a lifetime in Utah
Yeah.
and never repeat yourself. And I was just blown away by that landscape, because I
I,
think it's
I'll tell
very,
you a little. I'll tell you a funny guy doesn't even spend time in the whole state of Utah. He spends time, I'd say, within 100 miles of where he lives.
it's just astonishing. And what I
Yeah.
what I realized, and I think this is something I think is interesting about, again, the way that we consume images. I came to the Southwest having seen a lot of images. I've done a lot of research, and you see all the places that people go to shoot in Utah and Arches and in Canyonlands and Grand Canyon. And you think, oh, I'm going to see these places. And then you go there and you're like, we didn't go to any of those places.
Yeah.
I didn't, because there is so much there that I think, it's very easy to go to the places that everyone sees. But there is so much. And I remember we were driving I was sitting with Dennis. We spent some time in Hanksville and then we spent some time in Bluff. And we were driving from Hanksville to Bluff. And that drive along that road,
It's
you go
amazing.
through landscapes. And I'm like, in my country where I live in Portugal, the landscapes that you drive through on that road, if they were in Portugal, they would be the most beautiful part of the country. But in Utah, they're just the boring bit that you go past, you go through to get from one better place to another. And
Yeah.
it was constant like, wow, this place is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved being in the US. I just thought, it's such a wonderful country. The people are wonderful. And just you have, if you grew up with I did in Europe, Europe has had thousands of years of civilization. And by civilization, what that means is towns, cities, settlements, agriculture.
Right.
So all of the wilderness that we used to have on this continent is more or less gone. It's been turned in, it's been farmed, all the predators have been hunted from extinction. There's not many places that you can go to in Europe where you're not seeing the mark of hundreds of years of civilization, whether it's the mountains that have all got ski slopes in them or the fields that have been used for farming. We don't really have wilderness. And then what you have in the US, and it's a thing that is such a valuable thing. And I think, you guys have to fight to keep it and the wilderness that you have, because that capacity to go to a place and be miles away from anything that's concrete or glass or, and just be in a wild place
Yeah.
that looks exactly the same as it would have done 1,000 years ago. It's so rare. We have great cities in Europe, fantastic cities, but wild places that, this Iceland is wonderful, and there are little corners of places in Europe, but these vast areas of just wild places. That was the thing that hit me in the US, is just driving and just being, just in the Pacific Northwest, just spending an entire day and all I see is trees.
Hmm.
And it's wonderful. It's a gift. It's an amazing thing to have. And it's such a beautiful country. And just looking for more reasons to go back to the US now. It's a wonderful place to photograph.
Come
Well,
on
maybe,
out.
maybe we could get you out to the Smoky Mountains. You might enjoy that
Well,
at the right time of year.
I knew this would happen as soon as when I go to the US, it's just going to open like the floodgates, and it's just going to like, now we want to go here, now we want to go
Well,
here.
Oh yeah.
well,
It's
you,
just-
you know where I'm at. You know where John's at.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
got plenty of friends. You take some time off and relax, but you always have an invitation. John, this sounds like a good topic for another podcast.
It does. It does.
But
We'll do a Kickstarter to get Andy to the US.
anyhow, so here's what we'll do, Andy. We'll put all your information up here, and we're in touch. So when the Kickstarter does become active,
Mhm.
let us know, and we'll make sure that we mention it again on another podcast and get it linked here so that everybody will be able to do that. But the best way to do that would be to go to Andy's website or go to, I'm sure you're going to talk about it on your YouTube channel. Go to Andy Mumford YouTube's channel and subscribe, and you'll all know when this is going to happen. I can't wait, and I want to be the first one to order a book. So, um,
Thank you very
yeah,
much. I
Yeah.
really.
yeah, I can't wait. Anyhow, John, any last thoughts?
No, it's been an absolute joy, Andy. Thank you for being here.
Always is. Andy, we got to get you back. Maybe we'll get you back with Dennis. We'll get Dennis on sometime. We'll tell stories.
Yeah, you don't need anyone with Dennis. Dennis has enough stories.
Yeah, he does.
Dennis is a client of mine who's become a dear friend of John, and a good
Yeah.
client and a dear friend with Andy as well. And Dennis and I have probably spent, I bet you we've spent, probably 5 or 6 days just in time riding together in cars. And It's just one of the fun things that I've gotten to do. But at any rate, thank you for being here, Andy. We'll get you back certainly when this book is available, and we can hold it in our hands and talk about it. And you know, I'm excited. Any last thoughts on your end, Andy?
No, it's as ever. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. I think it's what you find when you talk to people who are just who have similar philosophies about photography is that really photography is just it's only like a part of it. There's just so many. It's a way of, I think, kind of expressing a particular aspect of your personality.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always just the thing, and this, when we talk about people like Dennis and yourself and people like Guy Tal, there's so much more beyond the taking of the photographs that is.
Well, I learned the line from Guy that images are a byproduct of the experience. I'd love to take credit for it, but that's his line. So, in
You're not
fact, that
taking
reminds me, I got to call him today.
you're not photographing the place, you're photographing the way it makes you feel.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
there you
anyhow,
go.
thank you for being here. We'll get you back, and I'm excited for the book. And until next time, everybody, questions, comments, suggestions, we talk photo at gmail.com. And until next time, we'll see you guys again. And thank you all for being here. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Bye bye.